Oh man, it's Nintendo Switch 2 Direct Summer 2025 prediction time. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and I think it's that time of year. It's now finally time to get into my predictions for what will be in the next big Nintendo Direct that I do not think is that far off. I think we could actually be very, very close, and I think there are going to be some very exciting things in this upcoming presentation, which is what I would like to talk about today. But before going forward, let me point out, I'm aiming for a goal of 60,000 subscribers. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So let me first go over why I think this Nintendo Direct is happening pretty soon. So, firstly, just from a historical perspective, this is the time of year when we would be getting a Nintendo Direct. Taking a look at the Nintendo Direct archive, looking at the history of things here, last year, June 18th of 2024, the third full week of the month, we got a big Nintendo Direct. We go back to 2023, June 21st, in the third full week of the month, we got a big Nintendo Direct. And then even going back to 2022, in the summertime, while there wasn't a normal big Direct, in that third full week we got a big Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Direct, and then a week later, we got a partner showcase. And then in years prior, there was an E3 presentation in June in 2021. 2020, we skipped June because it was the pandemic year, but then in all years prior to that, there's always been some sort of major presentation in June where we've gotten a great deluge of Nintendo information. And so here we are, midway through June, and we haven't gotten that big presentation for this time of year. Sure, we just got the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, that's a lot to handle already, but most of that information came out in April. And we went through a fairly slow period of news from Nintendo in lead up to that April presentation. So from this perspective alone, I think there's definitely information that Nintendo has to reveal, and looking at the history of things, it does make sense to think that there will still be news in June. Especially when you consider simply what we know so far for what's to come next throughout the year, which is not very much. Yeah, we know about some games, but we do not have the details on these games. We do not have release dates for a lot of these games. That needs to be done. Take Donkey Kong Bananza, for example. This game's coming out July 17th. We are a month away from this game coming out, and just how much do we actually know? Not very much at all. I will point out that on the Nintendo Today app, there have been some different things shared about this game, as AS112 shares here. There's a few screenshots that have come out that look pretty nice for Donkey Kong Bananza. I definitely appreciate them, and there are some bits of clips on the app as well. But nothing too substantial has been shown. We've been seeing basically the same stuff in just a couple areas of the game that we've seen from the treehouse that presumably are basically the very beginning of the game. And we even heard rumors from Andre Seegers of Game Explained that he has heard that there's still quite a bit more to this game. Which makes sense. This is a big title that Nintendo's pushing as part of the early launch window of Switch 2. We've heard murmurings that this is at least being made by part of the 3D Mario team. I think it's clear that Nintendo's being ambitious with this game. So, sure, we're just scratching the surface with Donkey Kong Bananza. This game goes a lot deeper, pun intended here. But if it was just Donkey Kong Bananza alone, perhaps you could explain this away by saying they'll just give us like a Bananza Direct, or just give us a few trailers on the game and leave it to release between now and then. But we also need to get more information on Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. When is this game coming out? All we know that it's coming out in this year of 2025. It's time for them to give us a release date. And then what about Kirby Air Riders? Also a game that's supposed to come out this year. We haven't even seen gameplay yet. But what about other Nintendo published titles like Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment? We're still not sure if that game's even going to make it out this year. All they're on the record on for saying right now is winter. Winter of this year or winter of early next year. And we just got the recently announced Splatoon Raiders with no release window at all. Is this game going to come out this year, or is this game going to come out next year? We do not know. There's a lot of questions right now, and not a lot of answers. We do not have a lot of set release dates for games that come out throughout this year, and historically speaking, by this point in the year, by the end of June, Nintendo, pretty much almost every single time but the pandemic year, has given us all the information we need to know in terms of release timing for all their major releases for the rest of the calendar year, save for some small exceptions. And so with all this in mind, I'm thinking that we could see a Nintendo Direct perhaps this upcoming week. Now I will point out that we have discussed a rumor a few times from PH Brazil that there would be some type of Nintendo Direct happening within the launch week or the week after of the Switch 2. That did not happen, but every time we talked about this rumor, we talked about how it seems unlikely, that I'm skeptical, and that historically speaking, it more likely would happen in the second half of the month. And so here we are. Nothing has happened yet in terms of a Nintendo Direct. But I think the point stands that Nintendo should follow up the launch of Switch 2 with more information, and now that a little bit more time has passed, it makes even more sense to do so. The dust has now settled on the launch of Switch 2, now we have to worry about everything else. But there are more hints that a Nintendo Direct could be happening soon, because Nintendo, they partnered with Summer Games Fest, and so we expected to see some announcements for Nintendo Switch 2 during Summer Games Fest, and well, we didn't. Which is quite odd because we've seen pretty strong third-party support, a lot of praise from third-party developers, and here we had this massive opportunity where third parties could announce a variety of games at Summer Games Fest, where Nintendo, having not partnered with Summer Games Fest before, partnered with them. And we did not see any sort of substantial announcement at all throughout the show, and the Switch 2 is doing really well, as we've already discussed. This is the hot item right now. Almost every third party wants to get their games on the platform, at least in this launch year where everyone's so excited to pick up the console and play the games. And really the only explanation I have that makes sense to explain away why there wasn't really that much announcements at Summer Games Fest is because most companies are waiting to have their games shown off in a big Switch 2 Direct, which will likely be a better place to promote their games for the Switch 2. And so what kinds of games could we be talking about here from third parties? Well, for example, perhaps Red Dead Redemption 2. Nate the Hate is on the record for saying that Red Dead Redemption 2, a port, could be coming over to modern platforms, including the Nintendo Switch 2, and this new version of this game could be launching for consoles later this summer or fall. And if it's going to be coming out later summer or fall, when would it be announced? Perhaps in June. And so what makes this even more interesting is that Rob Wyathoff, the voice actor of John Marston from Red Dead Redemption, said during a live stream that apparently there is exciting news that he can't share yet during his stream, and he's saying it will be revealed next week. I'm recording this on a Sunday, so this upcoming week, this just happened less than 24 hours ago, as you see here. So it seems some kind of announcement regarding Red Dead Redemption is supposed to happen soon. We have Nate the Hate on the record suggesting that some type of announcement should be happening soon because this game is going to be coming to modern platforms soon. Things seem to be coming together here. We've already gone the big PlayStation and Xbox presentations. We haven't gone the big Nintendo presentation. So it may be the case that they are waiting to announce this game for Switch 2, and then they'll also say, hey, this is coming to other platforms as well. This would be a big reveal to have coming to a Nintendo platform. So there's just another little thing that I think gives us some hope that maybe they're saving an announcement for Switch 2. But there's more. We had also gotten a leak not too long ago, a few weeks ago, from GameStop. They had actually had listings. You were able to search it up. Crimson Desert for Nintendo Switch 2. This is a game I've been excited about. I've been eager for more news on, and things have been pretty positive about this game. And supposedly, according to these GameStop leaks here, where it was literally listed on their online shop, it's coming to Switch 2. And so if we're seeing this pop up on the GameStop shop here, then there's a solid chance that this game is actually also close to announcement, hence why it's in the database already, which could also support the idea that we're going to be seeing a fairly large June Direct with a variety of announcements, Crimson Desert being part of it. But then this also brings me to another big third-party game that people are scratching their heads about, and that's Call of Duty Black Ops 7, which was recently announced for pretty much every platform but Switch 2. So what's going on? Both Nintendo and Microsoft a couple years ago already talked about how they've entered a legally binding agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms for the next 10 years. That was 2 years ago. What's going on? Well, the Switch 2 is only coming out this year. So beforehand, we had an excuse, but now we have the Switch 2. Third parties we've seen have been able to get out games fairly quick. They've been working on this probably for a while already, since they've already talked about the agreement a couple years ago. So then, what's the excuse now? There is a chance that because they have multiple teams working on different Call of Duties that come out every year, they just need a little bit more time to get Switch 2 involved into their ecosystem. But I also think there's a solid chance that the actual reason why we haven't seen Call of Duty announced yet is because they are saving it as another big announcement for the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. It has been so many years since we've seen Call of Duty on a Nintendo platform, since early on Wii U days. So, maybe that's why we didn't see it announced recently, like a lot of other games during Summer Games Fest. We even have some things said by Ethan Gach from Kotaku. Sources tell Kotaku both Microsoft and Nintendo are still working on getting Call of Duty on the latter's hardware and will announce something in the future. Now, this doesn't give us necessarily hope that it's going to be Black Ops 7. However, when we check out a report from Eurogamer, they also reached out for statement, and this is what they were told. While there is no word for a Switch to release for Black Ops 7, the team is committed to bringing Call of Duty series to Nintendo, a source has told Eurogamer. In a statement shared with Eurogamer, the source confirmed, "We are committed to getting the franchise on Switch. Both teams are working on it. We'll share details when ready." So the fact that they're saying both teams, this means that they have more than one project in the works here. They're trying to get involved with their overall ecosystem of getting Call of Duty out every year with different teams working on different versions. But I think this also implies that the team working on Black Ops 7 is currently working on the Switch 2 version of Black Ops 7. And so if that's the case, then Black Ops 7 likely is coming to Switch 2. And while this could mean Black Ops 7 may not be available at the same time as other platforms, it probably wouldn't be coming out that much later, because after a certain point you're already so close to the next game that's coming out the year afterwards. But there's something else I want to point out here when it comes to this whole Microsoft-Nintendo deal. So here's an official statement from Microsoft about their partnership with Nintendo a couple years ago. Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players, the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. So here, they say the same day as Xbox with full feature and content parity. So if we have both teams, that means they're already working on Black Ops 7 for Switch 2 technically, right? And if they're also in a legally binding agreement to provide Call of Duty the same day as Xbox and be full feature and content parity, what does that tell us? Well, at least according to their promise here, it would mean that Black Ops 7 should be coming to Switch 2 this year, the same day as other platforms. Now, perhaps, maybe within the contract, there is some sort of wiggle room there, is possible, but at least from what they've told us publicly, what they've said, we should be expecting Black Ops 7 for Switch 2 this year. And really, if that's the case, I think we should just be expecting it to be announced in a Nintendo Direct not so long from now. But on the note of Microsoft published titles coming to Switch 2, I'm going to mention a few more. So, Nashville has been providing a few different rumors, and Nashville is continually getting things right, as we discussed a lot lately. It keeps happening, and they talked about Indiana Jones coming to Switch 2. Seems pretty believable to me. Nintendo and Microsoft do work well together, so I don't see why this can't come. So yeah, I would say that there's a decent chance this game is announced for Switch 2, maybe in a June Direct. And on that note, I'll also say that there's a solid chance that Doom Dark Ages and Oblivion Remastered are also announced for Switch 2. Maybe they don't come immediately, but I do think they're probably eventually going to make it over to the console. And considering what happened back in 2017 for Switch 1, where there was an Elder Scrolls game and a Doom game in that first year, kind of feel like they might want to try and do that again as well. Another game that I'm curious on that Nashville suggested is Lies of P. And here he even says that perhaps it could be announced in June. And he's not saying this with full confidence, because apparently there's some debate if the game will be ready in time to announce it for a release date. But it's another possible game that could be announced in June. So that would suggest that, again, there may be an Nintendo Direct happening fairly soon. So I'm going to go on a limb and predict Lies of P, Indiana Jones, Call of Duty, Crimson Desert, Red Dead Redemption 2, maybe also Doom Dark Ages, will all be part of a partner spotlight in the next Nintendo Direct. I'm gonna guess maybe this upcoming week. Now, I'm going to give myself just a little bit of extra wiggle room here. I will point out that maybe the Direct ends up happening in early July instead, just because they want a little bit more time after the launch of Switch 2. I think that is possible. That's probably why I'm titling this video Summer 2025 Direct Predictions as opposed to June 2025 Direct Predictions. Ultimately, I still lean June. I lean so much June that I think it's going to be this upcoming week, June. But that is just a prediction. It's not based off any sort of like inside knowledge or anything like that. I have not been told, so we'll see what happens. But now on to my first party predictions here. So I've already mentioned a variety of games that I expect to get updates on in terms of release timings, right? Well, yes, I expect to learn these things, but I'll give a little bit more details here. For Donkey Kong Bonanza, I think we will learn about either Diddy Kong or King K. Rool being in the game in the next Nintendo Direct. I don't think both. I think it'll be one or the other. And I think it's a lot more likely going to be Diddy Kong, because I think Diddy Kong will be involved with the campaign in some way. King K. Rool may still stay a secret, and we won't learn about King K. Rool being involved with Bonanza until the game comes out as a big surprise villain. That is my prediction when it comes to that particular game, and also we're going to see more areas of the game, and we'll get a better understanding of this game and how it's more than just random destruction. There's a little bit more to the design and the platforming of this game. We'll see even more of how lore-rich this game is, and we may even learn how Pauline could be involved, although that could be something that's a spoiler for the game that we won't learn about until it comes out. And on the note of Pauline, I do also want to say I'm expecting to see some sort of announcement regarding an update for Mario Kart World. I'm expecting some free updates, at least at first. They may make mention of an eventual paid expansion pass. That is a possibility. But as we've been discussing over the last few weeks, I think we're going to see new costumes for Pauline and Donkey Kong, perhaps bringing in some other new characters such as Diddy Kong and stuff to the game. I think some update like this in this upcoming Direct for Mario Kart World makes a lot of sense. I also think during this Direct we'll finally get a significant push for Metroid Prime 4. I'll think with this Direct we'll now enter the territory where Nintendo is going to be hard pushing Metroid Prime 4, and so we're going to get an extensive trailer, and this extensive trailer is going to reveal elements about Metroid Prime 4 we did not know about beforehand. We're going to get a much better understanding of this game. And so I've been theorizing that there may actually be kind of like a vast area we can explore. I do not think the game is open world. I think it's going to feel very much like how it felt for prior games, but with some changes and some fluidity, quality of life updates. But if we take a look at the key art for Prime 4, there's like a vast desert. I think we're going to be able to explore this vast desert with varying key points of interest, and perhaps we'll see use of the speed booster, for example, that will allow us to explore this vast expanse. It's something I actually talked about with a friend of the channel, Kiwi Talks, in a podcast about a month or so ago. It's an idea I think makes a lot of sense, so I expect to see that. Fingers crossed for some changeable beam weapons as well. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of some voice acting. Perhaps we'll hear some words from Silex himself. I definitely think we're going to see a lot more about Prime 4. Some of you may be wondering about Prime 2 and 3. Personally, I'm sort of speculating that these games are going to be announced on the Nintendo Today app shortly before the release of the game, and so I do not expect to see them in this upcoming Nintendo Direct. But what about new games? What new games might Nintendo announce? Well, they just announced Splatoon Raiders, and so we may just learn a little bit more about that. Maybe that's part of the 2025 lineup, although I'm skeptical because they didn't give us a release timing initially. Regardless though, I still feel like there's gotta be one more title for the holiday season. And I'm gonna stick to my guns here. Some of you may be tired of me saying this because I said it a lot, but I really feel like Luigi's Mansion 4 just makes a lot of sense. I think timing-wise, Next Level Games should be about ready. We've seen they've already started hiring for the next project. I think Luigi's Mansion 4 coming out in the late October, early November period might be a great time, not just because of Halloween, but also because it could be part of the Mario 40th anniversary celebrations. The Mario movie is coming out early next year, and it might be a nice appetizer for 3D Mario sometime next year. And maybe I shouldn't even describe Luigi's Mansion 4 as an appetizer, because I think this game on its own is already a huge deal. On the note of 3D Mario though, I will say that we may finally get a teaser of this game, although I could see them waiting until September, until after Bananza comes out, so a 3D platformer like Bananza can still have most of the focus. And also, in September, where we typically get our September Directs, that's also the Mario anniversary time, so that truly might be the most ideal time to tease the future of Super Mario. But I'm not quite done yet here. I'm not going to call this a prediction per se, but I just want to kind of throw out like a dark horse idea. Because let's say I'm wrong about Luigi's Mansion 4. Maybe Nintendo doesn't want to put out Luigi's Mansion 4 yet. Maybe that game's not ready yet. I still think there's got to be some other sort of holiday title. And looking at the lineup Nintendo has so far, they actually seem to be pretty willing to experiment a little bit here and try out some of their other IP. What if, instead of something known like a 3D Mario or a Luigi's Mansion 4, they go for something that's very new? A new IP. A new IP that's been in development throughout pretty much the entire Switch 1 era. This game that's been in development for such a long time by Monolith Soft. What if now is finally the time for us to see this game? And maybe that's a big holiday title. Now, realistically, I would say that chances are it will not come out this year by this point. However, I do think there is a solid chance they could at least announce it this year. We finally get our first look, and it's one of a few big titles that are teased for 2026. I think we should remind ourselves that this is the launch year of Switch 2, and I think it does make sense to give us a proper understanding of what's coming beyond, because you want to get people invested long term on the console. But those are my thoughts on what we could see in a big summer 2025 Nintendo Direct centered around Nintendo Switch 2. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.